Walking Dead Season 5, Episode 3, entitled Four Walls and a Roof. An idea that was actually dropped on the show whenever it was in reference to the church itself, but that was long after many events had already transpired. We have to talk about a lot that happened starting last week. And first off, the old film, what about Bob? Well, we're going to answer a lot of questions about Bob because last time we saw Bob was in pretty bad shape, and Bob was pretty fucked. Bob's leg was being devoured by Gareth and crew, which became affectionately known as the Hunters. And as we kind of pan into where everything is right now in this episode, we start off by learning exactly what Gareth and them are kind of all about. And we also learn something about Bob, something that was kind of alluded to in the last episode, something that kind of was being suggested, however it was unsure whether or not it was true, and that was the fact that Bob, in fact, he is infected. He's been bitten. So basically, Gareth and company had just eaten tainted meat, which is a fact that really provided very little in the way of foreshadowing, aside from the fact that it foreshadowed the fact that Gareth and company were fucked. So Sasha and a couple of others begin to search for the missing Bob, and of course, they believe that 3 people are missing, and they think that wherever they are, they're all there together. That, of course, being Bob, Carol, and Daryl. Of course, we all know from the last episode that Carol and Daryl are actually somewhere completely different. And we don't know where they are. We don't see them at all during this episode until the very end, where we see Daryl, who is asked by Michonne where Carol was, and he seems to kind of go behind him and say, "Come on out." And we're not quite sure what that means, and it's kind of confusing. But now we're going out of sequence. But since they are on this search, immediately Sasha believes that there is some sort of connection between whatever is going on and the priest, Father Gabriel, which leads to the ultimate learning as to exactly what Father Gabriel is all about, exactly what Father Gabriel did, why it seemed like he was hiding something, and that's because he was hiding something. He was hiding a dark secret. He was hiding a lot of guilt for something that he had done, and that was the fact that he had locked the doors to the church, and he didn't allow the members of his congregation in late at night, women, children, all during the apocalypse whenever the things were first starting to go terribly. He did not offer the church as a place of sanctuary, even though that is what a church is really regarded as. And these were members of his own congregation. They were left to essentially die and be changed, be bitten, be transformed. And that's the reason why the photograph from the second episode and the individual who really shocked Gabriel, the walker that really shocked Gabriel in the muck in the second episode during that scene, which is also the scene where Bob got bit, why that had so much significance and why it seemed to really shake Gabriel down to his core, because it was somebody who was very close to from the parish. So we learn about all of this, and we learn a lot about we learn a lot about what happens with Bob, considering he finds his way or is dumped back out in front of the church, almost like bait. They find him out there, they take him in, he reveals everything that had happened with Gareth and company, and also reveals his bite, which has Sasha very kind of defensive. She feels very kind of hurt because he didn't tell her immediately after that it happened. To which he responded the fact that they would start talking about the end, when in reality what he really loved was the middle part. So, with all this going on, there's still another problem. Daryl and Carol are nowhere to be found, and Abraham is not willing to wait any longer to get Eugene and his crew up to Washington to start manufacturing and start kind of the process of the cure of this whole thing. Start the journey up there. He doesn't want to wait any longer. They've repaired the bus in which belonged to the church that Gabriel was willing to give to them for them to use. And he wants everybody to come along with him, and they refuse. They refuse because they wish to wait for Daryl and Carol, which is something that leads to a bit of a face-to-face confrontation between Abraham and Rick, to which Seamus Wannabe and Rick nearly throw down, and is stopped by Glenn, who actually works as a fairly viable voice of reason though some bartering is what happens. 12 hours is the ultimatum agreed upon between Rick and Abraham. Daryl and Carol aren't back before then. They're making tire tracks. It all ultimately leads to an ambush by Gareth. Rick and a couple of others decide to wander away from the church, and Gareth is able to slip inside with his group of hunters. Everybody's hauled off in one of the rooms of the church. The priest is hauled off in one of the chambers of the rooms. So it seems as though Gareth and the hunters have this place all to themselves, and they have to search for the people that they know that are there, and they're able to roll call everybody. However, it all ends up being an ambush. It all ends up being an ambush with Rick taking out two individuals right on the spot whenever they re-enter, and then ultimately getting to fulfill the prophecy that he mentioned in the first episode of destroying, and I mean absolutely destroying, Gareth with the red blade, or the blade rather, that had the red handle, which is a nice piece of storytelling that ended right there. Of course, Bob eventually does pass. Bobtimism is over. Bobtimism just started because I just coined the word Bobtimism like 5 minutes ago. The age of Bobtimism is gone, as Bob has now left us. He is no longer with us, which Tyrese has the task of ensuring that he doesn't turn by plunging a dagger into his head. So Abraham does end up leaving with company. Glenn also goes with him, and so does Maggie. So once again we see a very divided group once again. We have a group that's heading towards Washington, and then we have the group that's remaining at the church to wait out and wait on Daryl and Carol. And Michonne ends up sitting outside of the church, and Michonne is talking to Father Gabriel, talking about the horrors of the things that they've experienced and how it always seems to come back to haunt whenever they hear a rustle, and that rustle ends up being Daryl. What is the state of Carol? Is it Carol at all? Is it Beth? What the hell has happened to Beth? Because the previews for next week's episode definitely seem to showcase that Beth has been in a bad way for a long period of time, and we really don't know very much about who took them. Or should I say, who took her. Overall, this is an episode that was able to do two things very well, and that was to balance the action and the suspense along with the real heart-wrenching drama that was kind of pressed within this. This actually worked very well as kind of a suspense film that does end up having an ultimate climax, an ultimate conflict that does reach a climax. The whole Hunter's evolution from the Terminus evolution really showcases and continues this very dramatic and very kind of violence-heavy trio of episodes that the first 3 episodes of the 5th season have really showcased. Within this episode, we saw people grow, and one person that was kind of forced to grow was Sasha, considering she was going to be losing Bob, someone who she had gotten very close to. We saw Tyrese grow a little bit as well, considering he put it upon himself after Sasha kind of put it on him. He wasn't going to originally do it, but he demanded that Sasha give her the knife. He's finally able to kill again. He's finally able to regain that instinct that was perhaps lost after losing the girls in Season 4. Near the end there, the whole look at the pretty flowers, that haunted people for weeks. I also feel that there's another thing that needs to be discussed. At this point in time, are Rick and his group really the good guys anymore? Are they really a positive group? Because it seems like they've been forced to do some things that really, they've been placed upon situations that it's been required. But they've also done some things that some may construe to be as evil, or some may construe to be just as bad as what everyone else has done, or just as bad as the groups that they fight against have done. Are they really blurring the lines between good and evil here, or are they truly just doing exactly what they need to do to survive, truthfully being survivalists, as opposed to really being moralistic about it? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next week for episode number 4 of The Walking Dead, here in Season 5. please like, comment, subscribe, and share this with all of your friends, as we'll talk about each episode in this season as it happens. This is the Theater of the Sun, closing its gates.